Good morning, everybody. So I'm doing a health talk today on something that interests the hell out of me, and it has done for a long time. As soon as I realized that you could make an impact and a change with regards to how you're feeling during your period and during your ovulation, with regards to your food, your nutrition, and your training. And this is something as a coach, it's really, and coaching other women is really, really important that I understand so that I can pass this information on to my participants, my clients, anybody who kind of wants to know a little bit more. So if you are joining me on the live, let me know, because if there's any questions that come up, I can answer them as we're going through. Or if I don't know the answers, I'll go and do the research and find out for you. But I think it's really important to understand that, obviously every woman is different. Every woman experiences different side effects and symptoms with regards to her cycle. And for some women, it can really help to understand how you could map your macros. And what I'm talking about is macronutrients. So your fat, your protein, and your carbohydrate. And you could also map your exercise with regards to that cycle. Good morning, Facebook user, whoever that is that's just said good morning, Kelly. I need you to update your StreamYard because I'm not seeing your name. You can actually map your training as well to complement, and depending on how you experience your cycle and what type of cycle you have. So obviously I'm going to go from the perspective of what I experience. So I've always been very open with my cycle and how I cope with it. I have, a condition called endometriosis. I also have adenosis. And these two conditions are very, very much, hey Terry, no worries, are very much affected with regards to inflammation within the body. And I get a lot of side effects, chronic pain during my period, chronic inflammation, bloating, my weight fluctuates massively. And as a coach, I needed to understand, not just for me, but for my clients, that there will be changes with regards to their body and their weight and their measurements during their cycle. So many women put on quite a bit of weight during their cycle, the hormonal effect that changes. And they kind of really, can get very disheartened at that time. And they think that they've put on a lot of weight or all of the gains that they've made have been lost. And it really isn't the case. It's just a hormonal change of what your body kind of affects. Now, there's been a lot of scientific research done about this because it's such an interesting subject. So you can have a little look online and you can have a look at any of the research that's been done with regards to mapping macros around a female cycle. And you can obviously, as always, don't just take my word for it. You can make the conscious decision on what's right for you as a female. So the first things I need to tell you about is the female cycle is normally broken down into two phases. The follicular phase, which is known as day 1 of your cycle, which is the first day of your period, to like day 14, which is essentially the day before or possibly the day that you ovulate. Now, sometimes that can also be broken down into two. So you could have menstruation, which is day 1 to day 5, which is your period. And then follicular phase can kick in, which is like day 6 to day 14. And then your luteal phase, which is day 15 to whenever it is you finish your cycle. So it could be day 28, or if you're like me, mine's normally around sort of 25 days. I have my cycle. So it would be day 25. So let me just recap that again. Follicular phase, day 1 to day 14. However, you could break that down so that you don't count your actual period. Period menstruation is day 1 to day 5. Follicular phase then could be potentially day 6 to day 14. And then luteal phase, day 15, ovulation day, to the end of your cycle, whether that's day 25, 26, 28, however long you have your cycle. Every woman is different. So it's important to kind of just recognize that and understand it. Now, if you are a woman who struggles around your period, like me, and you have very heavy periods, painful periods, we can complement and help and support a little bit more around that cycle with regards to your nutrition and with regards to your exercise. So the first thing we can think about doing is during the phase 1 to day 1 to day 5 is possibly change up the training slightly. So rather than doing heavy weight training, which may massively affect how you're feeling, you might feel like you struggle, you're heavy bleeding, you don't feel like working out, reduce the weight training and instead do more steady state cardio. So with that in mind, we then can change the macros to help and support a little bit more weight loss. So in that perspective, we would have our macros split, you know, kind of quite normally, where your carbohydrates are quite high, good source of good fats, good source of protein. But you're not kind of excessively eating a lot of protein or a lot of fat because your carbs are quite high during your period. And it might be that you feel like you need those because you might struggle with regards to your energy and you might need a little bit more carbohydrates during that follicular phase. Yeah. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, some women find that as soon as they come off their period, actually that, you know, they can go back to weight training and there's no issue whatsoever. And it might be that on day 6, boom, they're back in the gym and that's absolutely fine. Some women struggle for those first 14 days. They find that actually, you know, their energy is still quite low after their period, and that they find that they still kind of need a little bit more support from having more carbohydrates during that follicular phase. When we hit luteal phase, so from ovulation, so when your body naturally is like, I'm ready to have a baby, I'm ready to be fertilized, I'm strong, I'm at my optimum. All of a sudden, during kind of like that phase, that's when your progesterone increases within the body in this luteal phase. We find that potentially we could drop the carbohydrates, reduce them, and actually increase our fats, increase our protein, less carbs, more heavy weight training. And this is actually what I do. So I do my heavy weight training more in my luteal phase from ovulation day onwards because I can get the most out of me. I find I don't need as many carbohydrates. I have my carbs as my pre-workout, but I don't really need that many carbs because I've upped my fats, I've upped my protein. So I eat more protein, more fats around my ovulation, all the way through to the end of my cycle before I start my period. And then as soon as my period starts, that's where essentially I find I can't do the heavy weight training as much. I have to do more kind of steady state cardio. So I switch up. I'm not needing as much protein because I'm not training as hard. I'm not doing as much weight training. So I switch it up. And so then staying within my macro count, staying within the amount of calories that I have, I just reduce the amount of protein and fat I have, and I have a little bit more carbs to support me. So if you are a woman and you're listening to this and you're someone who struggles massively during your period, as soon as you come on, it's like, you know, you can't train. You find that you are craving more foods in a way that you weren't previously during your cycle. just think about maybe opting to upping your carbs. Now, it's important to also understand that obviously macros and what you eat within those macros, not all carbs are equal. And carbs, obviously, we are split into simple carbohydrates and complex. Simple carbohydrates come from the white sources of carbohydrate, like your white bread. And it also includes carbohydrates that, come from a high trans fat perspective. So potentially, could be more of the kind of biscuits and cakes and those kind of things. Now, those simple carbs, they also, because they've got quite a lot of high trans fats in them, they also cause a lot of inflammation within the body. So I'm not sitting here going, be on your period and eat loads of cakes and eat loads of biscuits and eat loads of chocolate, because that will probably make your situation worse. That definitely makes mine worse. Because of my conditions, endometriosis and adenosis, if I have too much inflammation in my body, it makes my symptoms 100 times worse. I get so much more pain, so much more heavy bleeding, so much more other side effects like night sweats and, terrible leg cramps, bloating, weight massively increases. So I have to keep my inflammation low. So when I'm talking about increasing the carbs in that follicular phase, it's increasing the complex carbs, making sure that I'm eating more rice, I'm eating more whole grains, more fiber in there as well. I'm eating more potatoes, sweet potatoes, white potatoes. And it could come again, that we might be thinking about possibly, not having white bread, but having whole grain bread if you want to. But just being careful of carbohydrates that have got a lot of trans fats in them. And then once period is done, depending on how you work through your follicular phase, whether or not you feel that actually you can hit the gym as soon as your period is over on day 6, or whether or not you struggle right up to your ovulation, that's when you can then start to decrease the carbs. Now, when I'm talking about decreasing carbs, I'm not talking about cutting it all out. I'm literally talking about cutting it by about 10%. It's small. You would then increase your fats, increase your protein to complement your training. You're then start with the heavyweight training, and you're finding then that needs more protein, more good fats to complement and support that. Now, some women are the other way around. Some women sail through their periods, and actually, as soon as they come on their period, they actually find that, the increase with regards to, the estrogen rising within their body, they feel like a complete powerhouse and they're actually stronger. So they find that they can actually weight train during their period, no problem whatsoever. So obviously, if you're that woman, then that protocol that I've just talked about won't work for you. And you essentially then could think about having more protein, more fats, and those good fats that are going to help you hormonally. That's going to help you. And you might, then just go for a normal macro split, where essentially, you might be splitting your macros quite equally with the amount of carbs, protein, and fats that you're eating. So that might work. So every woman's different. It just depends on how you go through your cycle. One thing just to kind of make you aware of, though, as well, that I want to touch on, the first protocol I was talking about, the one that I do, where I increase the amount of fats and protein in my luteal phase. If you are a woman who struggles with PMT before your period, that week before, you are a hormonal wreck and you are tearful, and you're crying at this, that, and the other, and you're getting really stressed and you don't know why. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm coming on my period next week. That's why. Having that increased amount of protein and fats before you're coming on, that week before, or those 2 weeks before, will also massively help you hormonally, because it's your good fats that help you with your hormones. So if you are a woman who struggles that week before, and you find that you're, getting emotional, or your hormones feel like they're all over the place, upping those good fats in that luteal phase will also massively help and support you. Now, remember, with fats, we have our good fats, our polyunsaturated, our unsaturated fats, but then we also have our bad fats, which are our trans fats. And we obviously don't want to up the trans fats during that phase, because all that that's going to do is it's going to increase the amount of inflammation in your body. So just kind of be aware of that. Be aware of how much kind of trans fats you're eating. Try as best you can not to grab the chocolate bars, not to grab the biscuits, not to grab the cakes, not to grab the fried food, because obviously that's just going to cause more and more inflammation in your body, and it's going to make you feel more bloated. Your side effects are going to be probably worse. So just be careful of this. The other thing as well to be aware of is, if you are a woman who, either the week before your period or during your period, you struggle massively with stress, be careful of anything that's going to cause excess stress to increase cortisol within your body. And what I'm talking about here is stimulants. So stimulants, things like alcohol and caffeine, coffee, tea, having excess amounts of those causes your cortisol levels to rise. So just be careful of how much you're consuming if you know that you are someone who suffers massively with stress around your cycle. So it's just making those conscious choices. So I know for me, I need to up my good fats, up my protein in my luteal phase. I'm eating more fatty fish, salmon, mackerel, sea bass, all of those kind of things, eating those good fats, eating more nuts in my luteal phase before I've come on my period. Making sure I'm getting in, possibly some red meat in there as well. Possibly a steak, or possibly, some lamb, some good sources of high protein, high fats. Lots of veggies, of course. And I'm just very mindful of my caffeine consumption and my alcohol consumption that week before and during my period, so that I'm not causing too much internal stress within my body. And then I reduce those fats and proteins down a little bit, just by 10%, and increase my complex carbohydrates by 10% during my period, just to support me a little bit more. So that's where I will possibly be having more carbs, within each meal that I'm eating. Porridge for my breakfast rather than opting for just omelette. Having lunch and having rice, or having a wrap, or having, potato in there. And then with my evening meal, again, maybe having potato or rice within there. So having a little bit more carbs drip fed throughout the day whilst I'm on my period. And then as soon as that period finishes, your follicular phase runs right up to day 14. But for me, I actually just change it from day 6. But you might be a woman who needs to have that for a little bit longer. And that's absolutely fine. You can then start to maybe reduce things down and push up the good fats and more protein. So maybe you might want to change up your breakfast from your porridge, oats, or your overnight oats, to having more of your omelette, or having your smoked salmon, things like that. For your lunch, you might be opting for, maybe having more of a salad with root veggies in there, good source of good carbohydrates in there as well. Possibly, especially if you're training, having your carbohydrates as your pre-workout, and then maybe not opting for carbs in the evening because you might not need them. So you might be having more of your good fats and your good protein in the evening. Does that make sense, gang? I really hope it does. I mean, I love this subject. I love mapping macros around cycles. And it's something that obviously on the body transformation, we've been doing with quite a lot of our clients who struggle with their periods. Obviously, if you don't struggle with your period, and if you don't even have any periods, you don't even need to worry about this. You can just map your macros to your training needs. And obviously, if you're on the body transformation, you don't need to worry about that because we do it for you. But please let me know if there is any questions. And if you are in my VIP group and you're sitting here and you're thinking, I would love someone to do this for me, then obviously we start the body transformation 10-week program from the 4th of September. And all you need to do if you pay your weekly subscription to my VIP group is you just need to pay that additional £100 so that essentially you get the full package. You get the whole VIP because you pay that anyway per week, and you'll get the body transformation. We'll be able to map your macros for you. So if you are somebody who wants to learn more or you want to know more about how you can support your hormonal health, this would be key for you. So just get in touch, let us know, and we can help and support you. If you don't want to do the body transformation, but you've got any questions about anything that I've just said, please message in the chat box and let me know. And I'll be able to give you a little bit more support, a little bit more help. But I really hope that that's helped. And it's given you an insight into how we can map our macros to support our cycle. This also, ladies, will massively help you with your weight loss, because if you are helping support your macros, reducing the inflammation in the body, making sure that you're opting for your complex carbohydrates, your good fats, your good protein, being mindful of not grabbing a lot of trans fats or a lot of stimulants, it will reduce the inflammation in your body, and you will find that your weight loss will continue rather than jump around. And I've had my bloods checked regularly, have done for a long time, just had my bloods done again. And I wanted to make sure that there was no inflammation in my body. And that was one of my key things that I was looking at. Because obviously with this, I wanted to make sure it was working. And I will always experiment on myself before I broadcast anything to share that information. So trial and test it on me first to see if it works. And it does. There's a lot of research out there as well that you can read. Feel free to have a little look online and look at some good resources there of the studies that have been done, because a lot of macro studies aren't actually done on women, and they're not done on women purely for the fact that we have periods and that our menstrual cycle messes up the data. So it's almost like you need to look at specific research that's been done purely only on women who potentially are looking to lose weight and have mapped their macros around their cycle to see if that works. So any questions, just give me a shout. Otherwise, I really hope that's helped for you. And yeah, I hope that, we can support you and continue to support you with all of your nutritional, your fitness and your wellness needs. Thanks so much, gang, and I will see you soon.